Johnny Boy. Johnny Boy here. I am streaming Spirit Wars Live. I'm the audio engineer tonight. So, kick back here. I just wanted to get the stream going. And so we will get these boys on the line. Michael Basham and William Ramsey on Spirit Wars Live. One moment while I Skype them up. Hey, I got the stream for you, Michael. Let me add William. I am Michael Basham's engineer for tonight on Spirit Wars Live.
To the rescue.
Oh yeah. I will not be appearing. I will not be appearing on the show. What? Okay, go ahead.
You're a little choppy though. How about me?
Oh no, you're good. You're good. If you're good, if you sound good here, then we're good on the stream. Anyway, I'm not going to be appearing on this session. I'm going to be kicking back engineering, but this is a live Spirit Wars broadcast tonight with Michael Basham and William Ramsey. Let me hook up William Ramsey on here, and I will get out of your way. I wanted to get some music going and get the stream going for the people who wanted to listen live. So you can hand out. Did you see that link there I put out? You can grab that. It's on your video chat. I put the. You can grab.
I'm looking.
Can grab that link.
Oh yeah, okay.
Grab that and pass that around, and I will get William on the line here. All right. Turn on the music while I. All right, adding William to the call.
Phone's an issue. Johnny, how are you?
All right.
What's up, man? You sound good.
Good to hear your voice, Bill. Awesome.
Likewise, man. Likewise.
I'm engineering tonight for Michael Basham, so.
Excellent.
I'll get out of the
ready.
way and let you guys. I wanted to get the stream going so that everybody could grab that link. Did you see the link? If you see the link in the video, the Facebook Live video.
The Spreaker link?
Grab that link and paste that one around. That's your live link, and we are go.
I'm doing it. Pasting it right now. Can you guys go watch a movie in Alicia's room? Oh, good.
I want to watch a movie.
You can. You want to come over?
Yeah.
These guys, they're going to watch Pride and Prejudice for the 57th time.
It's a good movie.
It is a good movie.
I've been. You guys were talking about me the other day. I've gotten all the way through the first season with Jack Parsons. The Jack Parsons.
Oh, nice. What do you think about that? Is it good?
I don't know. I wanted you to see it because I don't know any of the history of it. It's really interesting, though. I mean, if all that's true, wow.
Yeah. Well, he was in contact with Werner von Braun. They were very close to each other. They were literally in a kind of smaller part of L.A. within a mile. You know, he used to call Werner von Braun, the founder of the rocket department. So I don't know. How many episodes was it?
It's 12 or 13. No, 11. I think it's 11 so far. But in maybe episode 9, I think. It shows Aleister Crowley in his mansion, and he's shooting heroin, and he writes a letter to Jack Parsons, and he delivers it to the the guy who is running the big cult thing, Thelema, there in L.A., and he's really jealous because Aleister Crowley's never talked to him personally, but no, Aleister Crowley's got a handed written letter to Jack Parsons, and he's like,
that's interesting. So they had that. So there was a guy in L.A. whose name I can't remember. There's actually a book about him who Parsons became more important in the eyes of Crowley, so he got overshadowed by Parsons. So maybe they're depicting that in the show.
Oh, they definitely are then. So that's true.
Yeah.
See, that's
no, it's true. Yeah.
Wow.
I can't remember the guy's name. There's actually a real underground fringe book about that guy. I'm gonna find his name.
In the TV show, he's got this pretty good sized mansion, and he does the workings there. He's got some virgins and so on.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
So the guy's name was Wilfred Talbot Smith. That was the original OTO guy. But, Parsons lived on a huge mansion on a huge plot of land, and all those mansions were divvied up and turned into smaller parcels. But back in the day, Pasadena on Orange Grove Drive, which is where they have the Rose Bowl, was like incredibly, rich people. I think one of the Bush people from Budweiser lived there. So it was very high end. So he had this, literally like a mansion.
So Crowley owned that guy's mansion?
No.
Oh, yeah.
No.
In the series,
it's
it's like he's like a rich, eccentric guy in L.A.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
He has this, he has a scar on his chest. It looks like a sigil. It's like a circle with a cross inside of it. Does that ring any
I don't know
bells?
what that is. I don't know. I don't remember that. But I know that Crowley put, the mark of the beast on all his Scarlet Women's chests.
Oh, I wonder if that's his mark, Aleister Crowley's mark.
Well, the circle with the T is like the Tau. So that's like actually a ritual drawing, So maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, it's on his chest. It shows him when he's walking down with Jack Parsons' wife, walking down the street. Because Jack Parsons' wife and him got real close. Because she started turning him to the he started turning her to the dark side. And
interesting.
I wonder if that's even true too.
Interesting.
She wasn't into it. She was a good Catholic at first, but she started getting really interested. So he's hanging out with her, and he's walking down the street in Pasadena with her, and it's not a tattoo. It's like a scar, like somebody cut it out with a dagger.
Interesting.
It's big, right on across his chest, a circle with.
I really need to watch that then. I don't know about that. But the book that I was referencing is called, if you're really bored, it's on Amazon. It's called The Unknown God, Wilfred T. Smith and the Thelemites. So that was it. And there's actually a kind of a semi-famous picture of Wilfred T. Smith, this Regina Cal character who was like a lesbian at that time, and Jack Parsons together in an attic where it was the OTO attic where they would do rituals, which is off of Hollywood Boulevard. That was where the old OTO lodge was. Not at Jack Parsons' house, but that was in the old kind of Hollywood from the 30s.
Yeah, that's in the TV series. They do it in the attic.
Yep, that's right. Yeah. So that's all correct. So that was all designed. That Gnostic Mass was all designed by Crowley based upon the Orthodox Mass that he saw in Russia while he was in Russia. So he actually kind of like another perversion of a Christian ritual. And in the center of that, I don't know if they show it in the show, but that's where the Book of the Law is supposed to be.
Yeah, so, and the naked virgin and inside of a salt circle and
interesting.
All that. Yeah.
So well, that was done. I think the producer was the guy who did Alien. What's his name? Totally blanking. Ridley Scott. So I think that he's involved in that, which usually means more serious, more intelligent.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm keep waiting for L. Ron Hubbard to show up, but that's like much later, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe later. Yeah, it probably will. Do they have him like Parsons mixing with science fiction writers and stuff?
Yes. He would go to book readings and hang out at book readings with his wife, who was into it.
Interesting.
Yeah, he's working on his rockets, his solid fuel rockets. That's mostly what he's doing. But it keeps every episode he's back in that mansion, up in the attic. And they're doing something.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out. So it sounds like it's worth watching.
I can't
just
think of
need
the
to
name
sit
of
down
it.
and do it.
It's CBS All Access.
Strange Angel, right?
Strange Angel on CBS. I paid $9.95 a month to watch it. Michael, I'm totally taking over your show. Get in here.
Yeah, where are you?
Guys, carry the show for just a minute. I'm going to try to. My wife just got home. I'm going to try to switch to her phone. Last ditch emergency effort here.
You sound pretty good.
I'll jump right back in the
Sounded
call.
good
Okay,
there.
cool.
Actually, sounded pretty good right there. I'm engineering tonight. This is not my show, everybody. This is Michael Basham's show. I'm pulling
Michael
out
Basham, G.K. Chesterton fan. I didn't know that. That was came to my attention within the last couple days.
Yeah, Michael has actually gotten on live and actually read from his books.
I have listened to those. I have listened to a few of those on the Fringe Radio Network.
I had never heard of the guy before, actually. I mean,
Well, I was talking to Mike on the other video chat that we tried on Zoom. Crowley referenced Chesterton, and Chesterton actually read one of Crowley's books, which was called "The Soul of Osiris," and so Chesterton had a comment about that, which is interesting.
not a nice comment, right? Because Chesterton
Well,
was like a theologian.
it was a critique. It was like a nice kind of Christianized. Here it is. Crowley has always been, in my opinion, a good poet. So he said something nice about that. And then the other comment was a little bit more verbose. He said, if Mr. Crowley and the New Mystics think that for one moment a broken temple of Osiris is more supernatural than a Baptist chapel in Brixton, then they are sectarians, and only sectarians of no more value to humanity than those that think the English soil is the only soil worth defending. Mr. Crowley is a strong and genuine poet. We have little doubt that he will work up from his appreciation of the Temple of Osiris that loftier and wider work of the human imagination, the appreciation of the Brixton Chapel.
Oh, so he's trying to... He's being really kind to him.
He is. And then, here it is, in one of Crowley's book, he replies to Chesterton in Why Jesus Wept, The Study of Society and the Grace of God. He says, Dear Mr. Chesterton, alone among the puerile apologists of your detestable religion, Christianity, you hold a reasonably mystic head above the tides of criticism. You are the last champion of God. With you, I choose to measure myself. Others I can despise. You are a force to be reckoned with, as Browning, your intellectual father, was before you. I hope Basham can hear this, because this is good stuff. So this is Crowley writing to Chesterton. Or not writing to him, but writing...
About him.
No, about him. Right. Whether we are indeed friends or enemies, it is perhaps hard to say. It has sometimes seemed to me that human freedom and happiness are our common goal, but that you found your muddied oafs in gods, ministers, passive resistors, and all the religious team, the, quote, Brixton Bahinchets, we might call them, while I, at once a higher mystic and a colder skeptic, found my Messiah in Charles Watts and the devil and all his angels. The occasion of this letter is the insertion of a scene equivalent to an appreciation of the Brixton Chapel in my masterpiece, Why Jesus Wept. Can I do more than make your Brixton my deus ex machina? You see, when I wrote The Soul of Osiris, Europe was my utmost in travel. Today, what country of the globe has not shuddered with the joy of my presence? The virgin snows of Chogo-Ri, the gloomy jungles of Burma, filled with savage buffaloes and murderous chins, the peace of Waikiki, Basham, the breeding, hopeful putrefaction of America, the lonely volcanoes of Mexico, the everlasting furnace of sands of Egypt, all these have known me. Travel thou thus far, thou also. Somewhat thou shalt learn. But otherwise, gird on thine armor for thy Christ, O champion of the dying faith in man dead. Arm, and out, for the young warrior of a new religion is upon thee, and his number is the number of man.
Wow.
So he wrote towards Chesterton. Yeah.
Let me add Michael here. That sounds like they were kind of they were Crowley admired him because he was speaking nicely about him.
Intellectual equals, probably.
Yeah.
But, he flat out says, at once my higher mystic and colder skeptic found my Messiah in Charles Watts, who was a secularist and free thinker, and the devil and all his angels. So there he is, Crowley admitting again, devil worshiper. But, the pro-Crowley people, of whom I just had a kind of, not conflict, but what was his name? Michael Sarian wrote some one-star review on Prophet, but this book that I'm actually referencing, he wrote a one-star review on it and said that I was I don't know, mediocrity or something like that. But but he had said something. I actually just posted something about him where he was saying Crowley was a beautiful man, misunderstood, blah blah blah. But we can do. I mean, I can read some stuff about Crowley that just peeled. I mean, it's just incredible. Some of his admissions that I think that if Michael Tsarian knew that I could publish that, it would just destroy any opinion of Crowley. It's bad.
Yeah, there's nothing like real information. Michael, did you miss that? William was reading a dialogue between Chesterton and Crowley. Did you hear that?
I caught the last part of it, and that just blows me away that there was any interaction between those guys, because Chesterton is almost like a Christian Crowley. If you think about it, he's one of the most absolutely influential Western Christian writers in history ever. U.K. Chesterton,
Yeah,
except he's not celebrated.
It's interesting. Yeah, but I mean, Chesterton was commenting on so much stuff, right? I mean, he was a critic, writer, apologist, just really a literateur, like a very broad literary, background.
He was educated in the Victorian era, and basically he carried the torch from the last, like all the classics. Like you read Chesterton, you're basically listening to a guy that spent his whole life reading all the classics and getting classically trained Victorian education, and then head on facing the onslaught of the eugenics movement and all of the birthing of those idiots that started the Bolshevik Revolution and communism and the Nazis. And like he was there like hacking away at those philosophies at their inception. I mean, he's a legend, and he's been completely buried by just everybody,
Where was he educated? Do you know his educational background?
That's something I'd like to go back and read his autobiography again, because obviously he was in England. I'm not sure which school he went to.
I wonder if he went to like one of, Oxford or Cambridge, one of these high-end places. He was educated at St. Paul's School and attended the Slade School of Art to become an illustrator. So that was it. So he's basically, as a young man, Chesterton became fascinated with the occult. Along with his brother Cecil, experimented with Ouija boards. That's interesting.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
they call him a kind of a mystic writer. The way that he writes is almost like in a sense, just constantly going off into these other dimensions and other parallel universes. But he's extremely logical and just kind of like plays with paradoxes, and it's just such a joy to read Chesterton. Anybody that's faced with any kind of modern day lies or any kind of like liberal professors, just come home, just close all your books at your school and just open up Chesterton, and it's like taking a nice bath.
So how did you come across Chesterton? When did that happen?
Well, when I was in Tokyo, 17 years old, in the countryside outside of Tokyo, I had brought C.S. Lewis's autobiography as kind of a new Christian, and he mentioned The Everlasting Man, and I was like, oh, that's cool. That sounds like a cool book. And then about 2 years later, when I was at a Jesuit university in Tokyo, I just happened upon the same book in one of the priests' libraries. A priest by the name of Peter Millward, he had this really cool library called the Renaissance Center. And I was just fishing through books to find something for my English class. I was teaching English. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's Everlasting Man. That's that book that C.S. Lewis mentioned. So I just randomly grabbed it. Back then I was just grabbing all kinds of books and just sort of flipping through them. And this book, I read every page. I read it like 3 or 4 times, and just absolutely changed my whole just dichotomy of everything, cosmology of them. I almost became Catholic because of it, but then I found out that the Catholics don't really even follow it. So he's just his own kind of universe.
That's interesting too. He got labeled a Catholic, but his ideas would probably not be considered orthodox within Catholicism.
I think the Catholics like to boast themselves that he was, and that he belongs to them. It's just that the Catholic Church now has betrayed so many foundational Christian things that, it's almost like Chesterton, he belongs to all of humanity. And I mean, he inspired Lewis, and Tolkien was one of those guys that came from that tradition. They're the next generation. Chesterton was like World War One, and then they came World War II and after. And so when you're reading him, you're like opening Doctor Who's phone booth. You're just going into this. And Doctor Who, by the way, was kind of also modeled after some of those books of his, which C.S. Lewis and others echoed. So you're getting, if you go through Everlasting Man, you're going through like a very quintessential, full of paradoxes, but very foundational Christian everything. It's beyond Catholicism for sure.
It's interesting. I think it says here in his bio that he was known as the Prince of Paradox. So he was constantly writing, taking things apart, inverting them, things like that. That's interesting. So when you were, so you've been to both Japan and then to Taiwan. When you were in Japan, what point did you come from? Did you come from a Christian family, and at what point did you consider yourself converted? Nope.
70s.
Try that again. Start from the beginning. Yeah.
Sure. So that was kind of like my family, but then he died when I was 5, and my parents kind of church hopped, and I was just a typical, suburban, millennial teenager playing Nintendo. But
you're coming in and out again.
He answers you. So it was like, okay, so if God is real, then I guess I better follow him, and just started sort of a journey of faith, not with any denomination. My parents were going to like some Presbyterian church, and they weren't sure what they were either. They were going like Lutheran. We were Lutheran once, then we were Presbyterian, and then I almost became Catholic in Tokyo, and felt a great love for Japanese culture, Japanese language, studied the language, and then I met the Children of God in Tokyo. And since I didn't have any like commitments or anything, I was like, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and join these guys and learn how to be a street witness or evangelist, and I went to communist China and then Taiwan, and I learned Chinese, and I studied the Chinese. I took Chinese for 5 years and got just a bachelor's in Taiwan. But meanwhile, I've been listening to you guys. The Fringe has been like my latest big conquest has just been to learn reality. And so it's kind of come full circle. And then I learned about the Christian mystics, and thanks to Johnny, we were able to kind of, start this show, the Spirit Wars journey. And I turned around and started interviewing all my heroes, and it's been pretty awesome. Like, I mean, I wouldn't profess to be an expert of anything, except I've been around, I've seen like some pretty weird stuff, and God has kept me. And
that's interesting. When you were in Japan with the Children of God, were they all ethnically Japanese, or did they have Americans there, or what was the kind of organization like?
Well, that's one little known fact, even among the Children of God members back in the day themselves, is that the Japanese Children of God were ethnically pretty much all Japanese. And I would never have joined them had I not met the Japanese version of the cult, because they actually had things pretty together. Like they really had that sort of Japanese sense of samurai loyalty to a cause, to a mission, and they were very spiritual. They had their, I don't know if you're familiar with anything about them, but I could go
only the most negative stuff, the most salacious cult type stuff that I've heard. But you did admit that they were a cult.
They are, yes, they were, and they still. I thought they were dead. I thought the cult died.
Lost you right there. You gotta get close to your phone.
I better step in here. I call myself an audio engineer. I'm on the front porch listening. I should be right here.
What do you know about the Children of God? Do you know anything?
No, I don't know anything about him except for when Michael told me. I'd never even heard of him.
Well, it's a small group, David Berg, but they were like the whole, what is it, River Phoenix and Joaquin Phoenix. Their parents were from Children of God, and they traveled to South America, all over, and it was supposedly, ostensibly on the front Christian, but this guy Berg, there was all kinds of pretty scandalous stuff, pedophilia, and all kinds of how they would attract followers. Internally, they called it flirty fishing, so some of the women would go out and find, followers. But it sounds like Basham came at it from a different angle from Japan. I don't even know how many members were in the Children of God at any time, but when I was younger at Berkeley, and this is like 1992, 93, ran into, I knew, it was a lot of hippies in Northern California, a lot of granola people, but I knew somebody who knew, and people in the outpost of the Children of God in Berkeley, California. So I had actually met a couple of them, totally normal externally, but man, there's some, I knew a girl who had kind of one of these same kind of Children of God names, these, things that referred to rivers and sunshine and all this stuff. And, man, she had like multiple personalities or something, like she would flip between persons. I didn't know. I was way too young and unread to really understand what was happening, but she would literally flip between different sensibilities at the drop of a hat. It was very strange. So that was kind of my run-in with them without ever researching them or anything, and it was quite an interesting experience for me. But it sounds like Mike kind of went through a different angle. You back, Mike?
No, I see him there.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm here.
So,
yeah, I think it's all these hotels in Waikiki are trying to conflict with the phone service. It should be better now. Am I coming in okay?
Yeah,
yep, beautiful.
Sounds great now. So how big was the group when you were in Japan? How big was the Children of God group?
I have about 10,000 members. I mean, they had about 10,000 members always. Like, even when I joined it, there were just a steady 10,000 membership.
In Japan.
Wow. I'd say like maybe about 800 or 900 or so.
So it was substantial. In like Tokyo. Where were you?
I was in Tokyo. I was studying at the Jesuit university there, Sophia University. I love to freak out conspiracy theorists and tell them that I joined the Children of God at the Jesuit university.
Right.
It was just
double. Yeah, right.
And I dated her, and then she broke up with me as soon as I joined it. So she was like, "How dare you join my cult?"
Oh, interesting.
She's like, "Oh no, what have you done?"
So how did you get from Japan to Taiwan?
Well, when I ended up with them, I was in and out of the membership. It was kind of like a elite end time army thing. And of course I'm like who I am, I'm going to piss people off, and they're like, "Hey, you can't be elite anymore. You're not elite enough. Goodbye." And so then I was just, running around America, like, not sure what to do with my life. And then I ended up with one of my friends that had also been in and out of the whole elite training squad. He invited me to Taiwan because his sister-in-law was there. And I found out that there was this huge community of Children of God people in Taiwan that were pretty much there because it's the cost of living is so cheap, the exact opposite of Hawaii. And people are friendly, and there's pretty much no law. So you can get away with just about anything in Taiwan,
I didn't know.
I mean, it's true. Like, I wouldn't even know where to begin with what I learned in Taiwan. Although, I mean, anybody that knows Taiwan, that is the Chinese government. That is the original Republic of China government that was kicked out.
Right. Chiang Kai-shek, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And they were displaced there. And to this day, I mean, it's still kind of a rotten, corrupt mess, but Chinese people are overall very civilized to a certain extent. So things, you're not going to get your wallet stolen if you drop it for a few hours, up to a few hours usually anyway. But they will, take you before court and just lie about everything and just let people get away with literally just heinous crimes and things go unnoticed because of the whole face saving thing. So
Like,
that
right.
was quite an interesting thing. Yeah.
How long were you there? How long were you in Taiwan for?
I was there for about 10 years.
Oh, wow. So you really immersed yourself, language, culture, the whole bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I can, I've done videos in Chinese where I just talk about, the fact that Mao Zedong was trained by the CIA and Taiwan is the original government of China. And I'll speak all in Chinese before Chinese students and, post it to YouTube and it's gotten, thousands of views and the Taiwanese are all debating about it, listening to my broken, but it's intelligible. I can intelligibly communicate just about anything in Chinese in a kind of a broken fashion.
What version do they speak in Taiwan? Is it Mandarin?
Yeah, Mandarin, and then they have some Taiwanese dialect. It's kind of like a Fujian province version of Chinese, but it's mostly Mandarin. Yeah,
and they have kind of Aboriginal people there too before all the Chinese fled there too, right? Isn't there some kind of tension?
Oh, yeah. Yes. There's quite a few Aboriginal tribes. They were all pushed out to the mountains, and the story is kind of sad. It's kind of like Avatar or something. They all identified with the movie Avatar when it came out. There's a movie called Seedic Bale, which is about it's like Rainbow Warriors or something about the plight of the Aboriginals, and then some of the heroes in World War II and how they were fighting against the Japanese. And they're very noble, but they're all Christian, by the way. All of the tribes are Christian, like all of them, whereas the Taiwanese are all Buddhist, pretty much.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and we did I went on some mission trips with some of the remnant of the Children of God, some of the good ones. I went out there to the mountains and had some good, just passing out Costco surplus and food and stuff. And
right. Yeah. So when you were in that cult, how long were you in the Children of God for?
I was officially there for, I would say, about 2 years.
Gotcha. So but, two years from Japan back to Taiwan.
Right. Well, I went from Japan back to America. My dad's a professor of violin at University of Miami. He just retired, and right now he's a concert master, a violinist with the Naples Philharmonic. So I went back and stayed with my family for about 9 months, and I was all indoctrinated, and I learned all this new information about the eschatology of the Bible and the end of the world, and and spiritual, kind of a mystic, like contacting spirits, angels, and it was amazing. There was a lot of stuff to imbibe, and my family, of course, thought I was completely crazy, but being the loving Bashams, they didn't disown me. So it took me about 6 months to transition from being a student to then joining them, and during which time I had a lot of miracles. Like, I have to say, it really felt like God was leading me to join this cult, and okay. I can't explain why. I'm still kind of like, doing, double takes, like, hello, like, God, what was that all about? Like, after 10 years in Taiwan, I can count on one hand how many friends I have because of what took place in Taiwan over the last year and a half. And this is after having really worked with just hundreds of people there. So it's a crazy, and a lot of them hate my guts. Like, they're suing me, they're threatening me, they've been writing me very bitter letters full of hatred and weird, twisted, kind of upside down logic, and like, we were praying for you, and you they think I'm like.
What do they hate you for? Because you left?
Well, I was helping people leave some of these cult members who were physically and emotionally abusive and had been self-professing pedophiles. For their, new 20 years, their junior wives and children from a previous marriage to want to leave that situation is their very right. And I had a huge house, 6 bedrooms with a friend of mine that we were running. We were thinking about bringing people to Taiwan just as kind of like a dormitory type of whatever, Airbnb type of thing. But it turned into a rescue mission to get these girls, these Norwegian girls, out of the situation of extreme abuse. And instead of joining the side of women who are being abused, all the cult people in Taiwan just decided to say, well, they're the ones that are wrong, and Michael shouldn't be defending them, and those girls should just go back to where they were, and just completely like going into psycho mode, and to the point of just grabbing my daughter out of my house, kidnapping her out of my house, suing me over and over again, calling me an incestuous pedophile, whatever, he doesn't believe in vaccines. I mean, I saw hundreds of pages of lies about me in Chinese in the courts of Taiwan. Wow. By cult members. And of course they hid it very cleverly. They were like, oh no, it's not, we're not suing you. It's just your ex-wife doing it. Well, she was being used by them. So it was very clever the way that they did it. To this day.
So in Taiwan, the Children of God was involved in the kind of David Berg pedophilia stuff. Is that correct?
Well, this is the thing. Like, I think, your friend who was saying like, oh, Aleister Crowley's a great guy, and criticizing you. He probably doesn't read the stuff where it's like,
well,
Aleister Crowley.
Not my friend. Michael Sarian is not my friend.
I know, I'm being sarcastic. Okay. It's a similar sort of situation. Like, I think a lot of things that David Berg wrote are true and good and very, very ahead of their time. The problem was even the most loyal people to him admitted later, like, look, this guy did touch his daughter. But then they don't want to talk about that. They don't want that to be a part of the discussion at all. So in the same way, like Crowleyites, they're going to be like, oh, he's so cool. And they're not going to focus on the fact that he was a pedophile.
Right.
Right. And that was the situation in Taiwan. Was there were people there that had done stuff, and I could never figure out, like, why don't you guys want to be on a podcast? Why don't we do some online witnessing? Like, oh no, never use my name, never. I'm like, what's wrong with this? And now,
but here's where the numbers to me. So you were in the Children of God for 2 years, but you went from Japan, where you were in the Children of God, to living in Taiwan for 10 years. So how long were you associated with those people?
Well, you could say I was associated with them until about 2 months ago when I moved to Hawaii. This has been my detox from being surrounded by these people, which as time went on, it's like something happened to where the escapees, like the former members, were just more and more just hopeless and just living in the past and just focusing on the abuse of the past and how they'd been raped when they were kids or something. And the ones who were in it became absolutely vile, like outright satanic, like, I'm going to get you, I'm going to destroy your life type of weirdness. And so it was just like, there's nothing left for me to do here. I've worked with you guys, I thought you guys were the end time church, and right. None of you guys are going anywhere. It's like you still live in 2008 when the last Mo letter came out. The Mo letters were the publications of the group, which they had some pretty good ones in the back.
Why did they call them Mo letters?
Mo was the name of the prophet. David Berg called himself Moses David, and in a very, very, rightly so. Like, they had thousands and thousands of hippies that were just living around the world, living in hundreds of countries, like Moses, leaving Egypt and saying a lot of the same things that we're saying on these fringe shows now. I mean, a lot of them are straight out of those old Mo letters, which were their kind of secret, Patreon, patrons only
internal
documents. Yeah. And there were thousands of them. There was, I think, up to 4,000 of those letters, up to 40 pages.
When did Berg die?
Well, he died in 94, and then his wife took over.
His wife took over. So wasn't there some sketchy story about one of his wives or one of his girlfriends that her son came back and murdered her? Did you ever hear that story?
Okay, yeah, that was the very month that I joined in Miami in 2004. Her son, who she was impregnated by this whole like flirty fishing thing where you go out and you witness to guys and sometimes have sex with them. And she did that and got pregnant from one of their so-called fish. And Davidito was going to be like the leader of the group.
Right.
Well,
So that was right. So you knew that story. So that offspring of her flirty fishing, he was in the, yeah. Continue. Tell the rest of the story.
it's weird. Yeah. And honestly, like I even have to admit, like I was also somewhat just lured into the whole thing because it was like, you know what, sex is fine and God made it and it's beautiful and it can be used to win souls. And I was won to the Lord through sex. And you met these guys and you're like, okay, you know, I was just 19. Like I didn't really know, I should have known better, but that was one of the things that they did. And he grew up and was apparently more spoiled than abused. People, you know, who met him that I knew were like, this kid was the most spoiled brat you've ever met. I actually interviewed Michael Jeffrey King, who passed away a few months ago. And he was in the group and then he left early on, but he was full of fire right to the very last days, witnessing on the streets. But he had a lot of bad things to say about David Berg and the group and that kid, Davidito. Right. And, you know, that's an interview. I've actually interviewed quite a few Children of God people. I'll make a page of the like better people that I've met that were associated with that.
Well, on your Spirit Wars, there's a lot of names of people that I've never come across, like names that I'm not familiar with. So I'll have to kind of look through. I tried to look into all of the Chesterton stuff, but yeah. So Davidito was known in there that he went back and killed his mother, huh?
He wanted to kill his mother. He couldn't find her. To this day, his mother is still living in secrecy and off the grid. And probably for a good reason. I mean, there were a lot of people that got raped in that group. But he was trying to find her and kill her. Sharon Rogels, one lady that I need to interview again, she was actually directly in contact with him up to the months before the murders. And that's an investigation that needs to happen, William, because she was one of the people that helped him get set up, and he became an electrician in Arizona. And then he got in touch with some of the ex-members. And back then, the ex-members were so vilely just vindictive and just hateful and like out to murder. Ironically, that's kind of how the present members are now. But back then, like the people in it were all like Brandon Barthrop, high on Jesus, running around, passing out tracts. And but then he got in touch with the ex-members who were like,
the bitter ex-members, right?
Killer.
So he didn't kill his mother, he killed somebody else, is that right?
Yes, yes. He couldn't find his mother. He found his nanny or his babysitter, and he pretended like he needed help, and then he went there and he stabbed her, and then he shot himself or something. Yeah.
What was the Children of God's connection to the Jesus people?
Well, from what I understood, and this is what they taught me. Okay, so you might want to like
take a grain of salt. Yeah.
But what we understood was that it was in the period of time in 1968 when the hippies were a new thing still, and the Jesus people hadn't started yet. Well, David Berg, his mother was Virginia Brant Berg, a famous TV evangelist, and she was kind of running, the end of her course, and she was a great evangelist. He was always kind of following on her curtails or skirt tails or whatever. And then she was like, hey, David, you should go out there and start witnessing to the hippies. And so he did. And because he had all this end time, he was kind of like a cross between Benjamin Baruch and Brandon Barthrop, if you can imagine that. Like really
I don't know who Benjamin Baruch is.
Benjamin Baruch is like my favorite by far end time watchman, like a Steve Quayle plus, type of knows all this end time.
And you've interviewed him for Spirit Wars, right?
I just finished editing that interview just before we started this phone call. So
okay, gotcha.
Full of Benjamin's interpretations of Daniel. And to be honest, you can talk to anybody that was in the cult, and they will tell you that they learned so much Bible in it because it was all about memorizing the Bible. Tons and tons of scriptures.
So did you feel like it was almost an overload of scripture, like to the point where you were in kind of a coercive environment where you had to there was kind of like this whole thing that's common in some sketchy Christian groups is like, you're the elect, you're the special ones. Nobody else knows how to do this right. We know how to do it right. We have the pipeline to God. You see that in the Seventh-day Adventist Mormons, etc.
Yeah, they had all of that going on, but they wanted to not have that because it was a very like self-conscious cult. It was like, ha ha, we're in a sex cult, ha ha. You talk to people, and I would go door to door witnessing like Jehovah's Witnesses, but we would be dressed in normal clothes and be kind of like just thoughtfully talking about Jehovah's Witnesses and talking about how David Berg, learned from all these different cults and try to take something from the Mormons and something from even non-Christian sects, and like, let's just, formulate this. And yes, there was a coercive thing. Like, you weren't even allowed to go across the street to 7-Eleven by yourself. One time I did. And they're like, you can't go there by your, what did you do? I'm like, I just went, and like, you can't ever do that. I'm like, what did I,
What's their rationale for not allowing you to be out by yourself?
Well, fear. That was the thing. There was a lot of fear. Like, don't listen to rock music. It's the devil. But then all their music was based off of the rock music of their day. I mean, don't read any publications but our publications. You're like,
gotcha. What? It's definitely cultish, no doubt. I missed the whole part of it. I'm asking that question about the Jesus people. So Berg had somehow converted somebody in the hippie movement who started the Jesus people. Is that what happened?
Well, he was probably, and this is their interpretation of history, but they were like, we are the ones who started the Jesus revolution. Like, we're the beginning of it, because nobody else was witnessing to the hippies at the time. I think it was a move of God, obviously. I don't think it was only David Berg, but there was something very special about those early months that started out in just going on the beaches and witnessing to everybody that was drugged out of their mind and bringing them to their soul clinics. And it started with a coffee house, and then it started with a guy in a trailer with his 3 kids and his new younger wife that just invited 2 other guys to come live with them in like another trailer next to them. And then they were just on this kind of gung-ho mission to use eschatology teachings and the gospel to win souls. And their message was drop out, serve God, live by faith. You don't need that. We don't need no education. They were saying the same message of the hippies. So that's why it just spread like wildfire. Like, you can find them all throughout hippiedom in the 70s, in France and in Japan, and like every country had something, like some kind of huge Children of God thing going on. And of course it was culty, but I have to tell you this, there was a lot of joy at times. And I interviewed the guy that played the Antichrist, Brian Moon, or Gabe Iowa. I interviewed him 3 times. And he would say the same thing. He was like, look, I was there. I didn't see any pedophile stuff going on. But he was one of the good ones. Like, the pedophile stuff would happen, and then nobody would call the police, and then they would just kind of quietly like shut it down and maybe like try to kick that guy out, but no justice was served. And that's the thing about pedophile stuff in the Catholic Church too. Like, you're seeing the same sort of thing happen, where there will be a lot of pedophiles, and it's not like every Jesuit's a Satanist pedophile, but then there will be some, and it's like somebody pooped in the punch bowl, can't eat it anymore.
Well, the thing is that there's a code of silence within the Catholic Church. So the other priests, it's like the thin blue line, or the blue line in police. You don't rat out the other guys. You don't want to make the church. There's all kinds of incentives not to tell the truth about what's happening in the Catholic Church. You don't, man. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a shame. But yeah, that's why you almost never see other priests testifying about other priests, right? You never see them on the stand. You just hear about settlements, secret settlements, or anything like that. But almost no priests come out against other priests. I can't even think of anything offhand in all of these Catholic abuses that happened where a priest came out and said, hey, this is an injustice. This is a criminal act, right? Can you think of one? Maybe not. Maybe somebody knows. I read a lot of stuff, but I can't. I've never found that out. And just to note, I interviewed almost to the day, September 30th, 2016, Camille Blindstrub on my YouTube channel about the Jesus people.
Wow.
So that was an interesting interview.
Yeah. I was going to talk to you about that. Yeah, that would be an issue. I would love to talk to that person about the Children of God and compare notes. So they were definitely like coincidingly at the same time. But just what you said is so interesting because that's so true. That's exactly what I saw. Like the only accounts of child abuse that I came across, besides my own child, were actual people that were raped, and the pedophile or whoever was just quietly asked to leave the premises, and nothing else was ever spoken about it. But then I saw the victim promptly get into heavy witchcraft, right away. So there was just this weird, like, what the heck is going on around here? Like a disjointed, and I lived with these people in China. I lived with them in Harbin, China, and we were supposedly bringing people in to join us. So we were like the elite troops, but then like your kid, one of them's coming off of a drug overdose, and he now passed away. My roommate at the time, and Adam, there's so many weird stories.
So what kind of drugs? What kind of drugs are they taking in Asia? Do they have access to the same drugs here?
They have, I'm sure they do. I've never been offered anything but marijuana, and I haven't taken anything in my life. But it's a funny thing you mentioned that, because the only people I knew who were taking drugs in Asia were like the kids of the cult members of the family and national. Their kids were super, super into drugs. And after leaving 2 months ago, two of their kids, one of them was coming off of an overdose and committed suicide, and the other fell from a high building within just weeks of me leaving 2 months ago. And I'm not saying that it was all like whatever it meant. I'm just saying that there is a darkness that is coming against these people that have allowed so much abuse to happen. And now finally God's turning the light on. And the drugs are definitely a part of it, but it's almost more of like this cowardliness to not speak out against abuse, and to not do anything about it.
Did you feel like their eschatology, the eschatology of the group, was in line with maybe other Protestant teachings about the end of the world, or did they have a variation about that? And did you feel like that eschatology did you feel like within that group the end was right around the corner, like it was going to happen in 6 months?
I wouldn't say 6 months, but it would definitely, as it stands now, it's 10 years. I mean, they keep changing it because there's so many things happening in the world that, we saw this, and they never said an exact date, but it's very similar to a lot of end time watchmen eschatology that you'll find. It was post-trib rapture. It was, taking the entire Bible into account, not just a couple verses, and building something around that. There comes a point where you've memorized so much Bible that you kind of turn into Matthew Miller. Like you can't, I don't know if you've listened to much of Matthew Miller stuff, but that guy, even if he drives some people crazy, he's a genius. Like he is really a genius about the Bible. And it would probably be more along the lines of his eschatology, or Benjamin Baruch's, or and mix in like a Steve Quayle and a Canary Cry Radio. Like pretty much what the family, the children of God, were doing for decades is what, when they stopped doing it, suddenly podcasting was invented and Alex Jones came along, and it's like the same exact timeline of the apocalypse, except there's more mysteries to be revealed, because it says that the book of Daniel was sealed, and nobody really knows the day or the hour, but you could technically know the year,
in my opinion, if somebody gives you a date in the year, they're in contradiction with what Christ said, which is nobody but God knows the date and time of the end, right? So if there's a Christian minister stating that, they're in contradiction with the author and finisher of their faith. It just doesn't make any theological sense to me.
Exactly. Yeah. But we do know that there's a 7-year timeline from the signing of the covenant that the Antichrist literally shows up, and he looks like the Savior. He looks like Jesus. People formulate a new one world religion with him, and it's everything that they're doing right now. I mean, the family.
That's definitely happening. Give me 1 second. Give me 90 seconds. Okay, hold on. Johnny, are you still there?
I am. I'm still here. I'm in the background with my volume down. Okay, now I'm there. Michael, can you hear me? Michael.
Yes, sir.
Hey,
Yes, sir.
I was gonna say, when I first met you, you said that you had just left the family. I was in the family, man, and I was like, I thought you were talking about Dr. Future's family, the like the Knights of Malta, International House of Christian Breakfast Pancakes, Illuminati guys. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. They're a very, very rich cult. Our cult was really poor.
And
I think the leaders kept all the money.
that's who I thought you were talking about. We were talking about it in a private conversation. It was about 3 years ago, and you go, "Yeah, I'm going to expose them." And I'm thinking, dude, man, you don't want to expose those guys. They will take you out so fast. It's like they got like unlimited resources, right? Like the family.
I think so. I don't think anybody's really has really exposed them, but they're not quite as. I don't think they're doing as much like overtly crazy, heinous crimes against humanity, like in broad daylight.
Yeah, well, not in broad daylight, but like Dr. Future, the stuff that he covered on them, they were responsible for starting pretty much every war since like World War One. You know what I'm talking about, William?
Yeah.
Well, about what? What I missed that.
Well, when I first met Michael like 3 years ago, he said that he goes, dude, I just broke out of the family, and I thought he was talking about Dr. Future's family, the Knights of Malta, International House of Christian Pancakes, Breakfast Club, Illuminati guys. You know what I'm talking about?
Vaguely. I mean, I don't know that. So in the Children of God, they call themselves the family.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Like the Manson family.
That was their next name, because the Children of God basically disbanded in like '77 for a while, because the leadership was so corrupt. And then David Berg released it and said, "Okay, everybody go home." And nobody wanted to go home. These people were all too brainwashed. So then they came back together as the Family of Love, and then it was like the Family International in the '90s. Now it's just called TFI.
But that's the name.
Oh, interesting.
That's the Knights of Malta, Illuminati, International House of Breakfast Christian Pancakes, boys.
Oh, that's something completely different. You're talking about the family, the family.
No, they call themselves the Family International. That's them. I'm trying to be funny. They're the ones that have that big mansion on the East Coast, the International House of Prayer.
I don't know.
You know what I'm talking about? They're like members of the Knights of Malta. They're like Illuminati. They like start wars and play. They're like the chess masters behind the curtain. The Wizard of Oz. I thought that's who Michael was talking about. He's like, I'm gonna expose those guys. I'm like, dude, don't do that.
So, Mike, when you left Taiwan, do you felt like you were fleeing Taiwan?
No, I wasn't. I was basically just like, I'd spent a whole year with going to court over and over again, just to give them a chance. Like, let's see the court at least do its job here, or at least give them a chance. And I mean, it started with, first of all, after taking in 3 Norwegian girls to our house, which we had a few other people that were staying with us that were very closely related to us, that were like family, although they weren't related to us. But they were there as kind of like to get away from this guy that I had worked with previously, but he had just become so abusive that they had to get away. So we got them out of there, and next thing I knew, my daughter, who was with me for that weekend, I was already separated for about 1.5 years or 2 years from her mother, who hadn't really been in the picture. But her grandmother shows up in the middle of the day and just grabs her while I was across the street, and then just brings her to a restaurant, this German restaurant that they have. And we're like, what just happened? What is going on? And we realized that the people we were dealing with were not happy that I was basically being a resource, being, someone that is not pro control freak and abuse. And they're like, well, let's kidnap his daughter. Michael seems to be a nice guy, and he does this podcast thing. He's probably not going to do anything. We'll just tell him that he better give up all rights to his daughter, or he needs to make those girls go back. Like, you either make those girls go back, or you're never going to get to, have your daughter again, and we're going to start suing you. Well, I mean, it just suddenly awoke this sleeping beast of like, what? You're doing what? Okay. So, and it was a very difficult time. Cassandra Watkins actually popped out of nowhere at that time. Alan Davenport, we did a bunch of shows with them, and they were just like my lifeline. And I was going to court pretty much every other week, just visiting. The Taiwanese give you a free lawyer. I didn't have enough money to get a lawyer, but they're like, okay, well, we'll assign to you a lawyer. And I had to type out all these phone transcripts, of my daughter, evidence that she had been relocated to her mom's new house with her new husband that she married secretly. And they're like, well, she's doing fine. She's just fine. And then she was just locked in a room for a year. They just locked her in a room with TV, and she was, she's 6 years old. She doesn't know what's going on, but it was obvious they were lying. And so I had to take all these transcripts and write them in Chinese, translate them from English to Chinese. And I went to court and watched their lies. It was like, look, he's sometimes when his daughter was with him, her genitals would be red, as if like I'd been doing stuff to her. They would actually say this in court, insinuating that I was a pedophile. And he's got his mother-in-law living with him. We think he's sleeping with his mother-in-law, as if I'm going to do something so disgusting. And then, he's also sleeping with his sister. Look, his sister-in-law is staying there as well, and we think she's got something with him, because look at this YouTube video where they're driving in the car and they're having fun, And so I went through that, and then at the very end of all this crap, and I had to just go through all the list of lies and be like, no, lies, falsehood, exaggeration. The end of it was so we'll have a settlement.
Gotcha. You kind of came in and out there.
I just got a phone call. Sorry. To finish off there, the final icing on the cake, and all this time, these Norwegian girls are getting just pounded by this guy, Stephen Meyer, that was just himself as a great missionary, bought himself a Harley. He would go grab Bill Johnson and Heidi Baker and take pictures with them and be like, I'm a great missionary. But then he would threaten these girls and, sneak into the house. And it was just a mess. And finally, they got a divorce from him and they were able to escape the island. And the very next morning, I came to Hawaii to get married, and just like, these guys, they kept suing me again and again and again. It was like, this is not working. So we're going to move on with our lives. The court didn't help at all. They basically gave them most of any kind of rights over my daughter. And it was like, okay, they're obviously criminals. We've got tons of evidence and witnesses that these people are liars and they've committed perjury and they've abused women and children, and the court is going along with this, and any money that I gave them, it would just be turned right around to sue me again. I mean, it costs money to sue people. Like, they hired their lawyers. They didn't get any money like that. They wanted to sue me for just hundreds of thousands of dollars for any possible way. And then in the end, they were in tears, like, oh, we lost everything. Because of course they didn't really care about my daughter. They just wanted money. And they were full of revenge and hatred. And so in the end, it was like, well, I guess I could stay here and just keep going to court against you guys and just see my daughter like a couple times a month for a little while and just see what they're doing to her and then basically get nothing done. Or, you know what, I think we're going to just go to Hawaii and actually like build a future family and to have something for my daughter to be able to live in and to really get back on the ball with podcasting and with missionary work. And Taiwan is still it's in the future. I'm going to have to, obviously, I mean, still have all my stuff is there and everything is I have friends there that are very loyal to me that are privy to the situation. But it rather than like, oh, we've got to run away. It's more like we're not getting anything done here. Like Taiwan isn't helping, you guys have a 5,000 year culture of corruption and you're just happy to let things keep going along as it was. And, I have to say, Johnny and I are very similar in the sense that podcasting, listening to podcasts, doing shows to you guys is a very therapeutic way of just handling just evil and just betrayal and disgusting things that people do. In the end, it's not just a cult that causes people to be evil. Sometimes people just become dark and you don't know why. They're just, I don't know. It's why are the libtards all acting the way they are?
Right. Well, it can happen anywhere, any party, any person, any environment, any group.
Exactly.
It may just be as simple as group dynamics. It's don't need a cult.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, and I don't like to. I mean, I'm telling this to you because you're asking me the questions. I don't like to dwell on this stuff very much.
Well, I appreciate you sharing it. I apologize. It's kind of dark stuff, but I was curious about your kind of path.
We need your mind. This is like a hot wound.
You always ask questions. Get questions. It's the Socratic method. You ask questions to get to the truth. Congratulations on your marriage, by the way. That's cool.
Thank you.
You're in Oahu, right?
Yes.
Don't go body surfing at Sandy Beach. I'll just tell you that.
Okay.
It's super.
What happens?
It's just the most gnarly beach break in the world. It's the second most broken backs in the world behind the Wedge in here in LA. But Sandy Beach is brutal. It's on North Shore, right behind Diamond Head, and only really the locals, the kind of Polynesian locals, usually use it. But every once in a while, somebody gets a really bad idea and goes out there, including me when I was 18, and they dragged my buddy out. The problem is the beach break is so brutal that the waves are big too. So they're like normally 8-foot waves with a lot of power that come up the beach and push you right back into the beach break. So if you're not in superb shape, you can get in real trouble. So it's brutal. Do not go out to Sandy Beach. You should go out and take a look at Sandy Beach, but don't get in the water. It's really brutal.
Well, Waikiki has been really nice. It's kind of like living in like downtown, like I don't know, like the Bronx or something with all these. It's like Hawaii Five-0 versus every single druggie that you can think of on the side of the road. It's pretty.
They have a lot of homeless there too, right? Don't they have a massive homeless problem now in Waikiki?
Oh my gosh! So everybody is on the edge of being homeless here, and the drugs are just out of control. And the homeless situation. It's interesting because when I got here, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to get involved with these homeless. See what I can do. I'm still a missionary, and I found out that the way it works is that the shelters only bring you in if you are willing to do a drug test, and so the druggies prefer to just live on the street and just kind of get by with whatever food stamps. The system is so corrupt here. It's totally run by. I met somebody in the government who was running for office here who told me that basically the Japanese, speaking of cults, the Japanese cult Soka Gakkai basically runs a lot of the show. And
interesting, I didn't know that.
And there's a huge Japanese presence here, but there's quite a bit of like kind of mafia type of. It's like Democrat plus mafia, and it's amazing.
So bad slathered on top of bad.
You just need to find. I'm looking for awakened people. Like everybody has 5 jobs here, and I'm also learning how that operates. But I'm finding the people who are awake, who know about the Illuminati and everything. They're everywhere, but they're all working 5 jobs. You want to talk to these guys. It's like some restaurant you find like a part-time thing at. It's like every other guy knows about the New World Order.
Right.
There's a lot of able-bodied men that we need to reach out and
struggling to survive instead of actually seeing the root of the problem. Yeah, wow, that's a shame. It's really a shame. Oahu is a really nice island. I really like it.
Oh, welcome. Yeah, let's and Peter Goodgame's here. Peter Goodgame drove my wife and I to his church twice.
Nice.
Already. Really
good.
Nice.
That's cool. That's a long time Iron Show attendee for sure from back in the day.
You get around Peter Goodgame. One thing I can say about him is that the Christians that he has surrounded himself with are just the legit thing. And we went there the first time, they were all broken in tears. Like everybody had a family member pass away in the last few weeks.
It's terrible.
Crazy, but just the love of those people. And some of them were like into, getting visions and mystic and but it was just this kind of like, it was like a fringe podcast church. Everybody just.
That's a good idea. Maybe that'll be the future. There'll be a fringe Christian church. Like that'll be the header. It won't be Baptist. It won't be Presbyterian. In some ways, the exchange of information is kind of like an online church. People can talk. So.
Well, let me ask you this, William. How do you see yourself in this? Like, what do you think we're doing by getting this done. It's more than therapy. I mean, it's something you do as a guy. You got to get together with other guys and talk about stuff. But like,
absolutely. I mean, I think that for me, I wrote Prophet of Evil in 2010. I think that I was around probably another 10 years. I didn't really wake up to 9/11 until 2003 or 4, but I think that for me, it was my part, at least for me, was just to do my part to educate. So people can, because I do think that the information in control is down to the little micron. They really want the Mockingbird media and everything want to control all narratives. So for me, it was like a counter strike against that, talking about Crowley, which nobody really was talking about, and talking about, this type of thing. So for me, that was important. And then it kind of just morphed. Like I was really a guest on all these shows. Tried to invite myself on all kinds of different shows. Some people said yes, some people no. But, it just became, then I made videos. And then now I have a podcast, William Ramsey Investigates, where I just investigate anything, because I do think, at least for me, and what I'm called to do is just try to provide factual information on subjects that give things more facets of understanding. It's like the biblical quote, my people, what is it? My people fail for lack of knowledge. So I feel like I'm inhibiting that failure by giving people an understanding about all kinds of different subjects that aren't really covered on any type of mass media thing. So I think that that's important, but I also think that even in an online fellowship or an online discussion is worthwhile in some ways, provides even better, there's nothing like person-to-person fellowship, but it also provides a way for people of similar ideas and similar outlooks to really kind of, iron sharpens iron. So I think that there's that component, well, beyond just information. So, and I think that when people have that information, changes happen, because I think Trump was put into office because people had new information. They knew Hillary Clinton was a lifelong politician, hyper corrupt, murdering people. So I think that people getting this new information of different ideas, and even Trump came out recently, said at the UN, I'm not a globalist. I mean, that not verbatim, but that's an amazing statement for having all these other globalized people, probably going back to George Bush in 1988. Those are all Yale-y, people who went to Rhodes Scholarship types associated with Rockefeller, including Obama, CIA agent connected person. Imagine that for like 25 years. 25 years, that kind of policy where you just ship out the jobs and all the stuff, open borders. So I think, I do think that information matters. If people get good information, they'll make better decisions.
Absolutely. And I knew that you would say that. I just wanted to hear you say it for the audience, because that's something everybody should know, that these witness testimonies and your investigative reports and your research, that has caused so many nails to be put into the coffin of the globalists and the New World Order. And in their last death throes, I've noticed that the enemy usually fights you the hardest. Like I had the most witchcraft, just disgusting stuff done against me by my enemies just the night before I basically won most of my victories in court. The little ones that we had in court, I mean, basically it was nothing but defense, but I haven't even begun to actually offensively do anything to these people. But I noticed, though, that the nights before they would lose big time, and I'll never forget this, but my sister turned against me because of being kind of manipulated by people. And I was posting a fringe, kind of an announcement of our wedding on that night, which I felt like was very timely, because when my wife and I announced our wedding that very night, the volcano exploded and we were planning to move there. So it was kind of a sign.
So you were going to go to the Big Island, huh?
Oh, yeah, we still want to go there. I just talked to a Japanese guy in Japanese for like 20 minutes, and he just couldn't stop blessing me. He's 83 years old, and he was like, I just came from the Big Island, and it's just the most beautiful place in the whole world. And, I've only been to Waikiki and Honolulu and Oahu, but when I went to the Big Island, I was just, his eyes, his elderly, kind of glazed over elderly eyes were like just so full of life and light. And he's like, "Do you know how old I am?" I was like, "No." He's like, "I'm 83 years old, and I'm so alive." I was like, "Wow."
That's funny. Just a funny note: that area where the volcano exploded apparently has the highest density of people under federal protection, under the federal protection program, of anywhere else in the whole country. That's where they ship them out. So you probably meet some. If you move there, you'll probably meet some interesting people.
I know. Yeah.
John Smith. My name's John Smith. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, well, we have a really good plan. It's to build like a community of tiny homes, and we're gonna have Johnny ship out his trailer so that his trailer will literally be at the trailer park at the end of the world. We're gonna make a trailer park more at the end of the world than Johnny's, if he's listening.
That is the end of the
You're
world.
welcome to come too.
Hey, I'll come and visit. No question. If I make it out to Hawaii, but you can have Johnny there, and he can do all your cooking for you. You know, you can be your local chef. He's got all his recipes down.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you're totally
homemade pasta and gravy. You know,
biscuits and gravy.
Red biscuits and gravy. Always some gravy.
Okay, we are not starting a cult. Just disclaimer.
No
cult. We want a retreat center. That our vision is to have just, our own house, separate, thing for our family, kids that can run barefoot on green grass. But then somewhere nearby that, maybe at Peter Goodgame's ranch, because he's got a huge chunk of land there, we can have a trailer park, and you could just go out there and get a tiny home. They have these like little tiny homes where you can just fit a bed and like a little sink in the bathroom type thing. And just, I get phone calls all the time now. I got one this morning like, "Hey, do you know if anybody has an extra room that I could stay in for a month? I heard you're in Hawaii, and I'm planning to go to Hawaii to get some detox." I mean, this is the place to go. It's just Waikiki is freaking expensive, but I think we could pull it off in the Big Island, though.
It's compact too, It's like a little mini city right down there. I think it's a great idea. I wish you well. You got to think about a name. Got to think about
trailer park at the end of the world. I guess I don't know.
That's right.
I would just keep doing this. I would keep doing. We want to do a daily transmission. I have a long list of really bigger and bigger names. We're gonna have Rachel. Shoot, what's her last name? She's a huge new star on YouTube, talking about fringe Christianity. Oh my gosh, Rachel Williamson, I think is the last name. Anyway, shoot, he's gonna kill me. Coming on in a few days, and then Rick Joyner on the 3rd of October. So if you want to talk Knights of Malta, I will not ask him about Knights of Malta, so don't ask me to ask him about that. But just kind of get the truth out there, like a lot of these people, they have a cult following. And then my kind of idea was like, let's mix up the cults. Like, let's get the cult following of originally I thought, well, let's just introduce people to some of the family's little known stuff. And then I found out how evil things were. I was like, whoa, this is not a distress signal. It's a warning signal. Do not come near this planet, H.R. Geiger. Right. Anyway, I wanted to say that you're doing something that is changing the world. And it's something that the enemy is going to fight the most when he's about to get hurt the most. Don't quit.
I could tell stories. The thing is that I go all the way back when I was in D.C., I worked on for a summer, I was the basically factotum of a guy, John Clark, who was working on the death of Vince Foster, So I'd seen these political murders take place, and it's just incredible, the cover up and the party lines and the talking points, and so that was a real eye opener for me. And now that I'm in LA, I used to think that DC was like the suicide cap, the fake suicide capital of the world. LA is just as bad. Holy smoke. So there's still a lot of bad things happening, about all of these murders that aren't really ever properly investigated. So, I think that influenced me a lot, that whole situation, because it wasn't just being involved in that, but just the cover up and the lies. And there were only really a few people courageous enough to really say that death was super suspicious. And one of them, a guy who, if you get a chance, and you live in Hawaii, go see him. But he ran a thing called, he used to call it Rancho Run Amucka, but now he runs What Really Happened. And his name is Mike Rivero. Have you ever heard of Mike Rivero?
Oh yeah, he lives here. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, give me a list of names and I'll look them up.
I mean,
I
I
gotta
wonder, he does a daily show, but he's actually probably, if I would put top 10 honest people in the alternate media who are trying to make a difference, I literally would put him in the top 10. And he really started out just running a blog saying, hey, this Vince Foster thing is a bunch of hooey, this is a bunch of nut job. And this guy, he's had like 10 million, denial of service attacks on his website and all this stuff. But Mike Rivero is legit. I don't know where he is in Hawaii, but I think he's in Oahu somewhere. But if you got a chance to meet him, that's meeting a living legend. You should interview him about Vince Foster if you get a chance. He knows everything about that
tonight. Yeah, sure. Yeah. No, I mean, listen, God has put me in a position now where, although, I mean, we do need money. Like, I do need to remind people to support us on Patreon so that I don't have to work 5 jobs at the Burger Barn down the street to support ourselves. I'm willing to do that, but with my wife by my side, I interviewed her a year ago, and she was the only one crazy enough to stand by this guy during all this stuff, and she's just been the biggest support to me. She came home and just, threw the phone in front of me like, here, quick, take it. And I grabbed it, got you guys on Skype, and the internet's fine now. Like, she is so much like a support that I now have the ability to set aside some time every week to interview up to 3 or 4 people that we can actually do stuff. We can actually make this happen. So I'll be emailing Mike Rivera. If you know anybody else too.
Yeah, I don't know who else is out there other than Peter Goodgame, but I would definitely try to get Mike Rivera and start from the begining. Ask him questions about Vince Foster and how it affected his job, why he moved to Hawaii. Talk a little bit about Hollywood. He was a special effects supervisor, how it affected him. But he has he's been around for a long time, even before Alex Jones almost. And he's been on Alex Jones, but he knows everything on all subjects, spying, the New World Order, the whole bit. So
does he have like a bunch of editors that contribute to that whatreallyhappened.com? Because it seems like that website gets quoted a lot, like regularly on like Steve Quayle and stuff.
Well, it should be quoted. It's a fantastic website. I don't know who else. I thought it was independently run by him, but he may give rights for posting to other people. I don't know. I really don't know. But I actually was in contact when I was working more as a producer for Ed Opperman. I got him interviewed by Ed, so I was in contact with him a year and a half. I actually know that he did a show within the last week, so I know he's active. He's out there. He'd be a great guest. If you met him in person, man, you're meeting a living legend of the alternate media. Really one of the first guys. Ask him about Rancho Run Amucka. That was his first website. Because if you can tell him that means you have specified information about him that probably 99% of the people don't know or don't have. That was his first website.
And he'll know he'll know you if I mention.
He might know me. He knows the people I work for. He knows John Clark, and he knew Patrick Knowlton. He knows those names.
Wow.
Yeah. We were both still around. Actually, if you want to listen to that, I encourage Ed Opperman to research or get in touch with both of them. He's interviewed both of them. Ed Opperman, John Clark was my boss, and it's an interesting story. Like, I have specific information because the police state in D.C. is very active, and they were harassing Patrick Knowlton, who supposedly witnessed an alternate driver at Fort Marcy Park where Vince Foster was found. And so he never disclosed this information, Knowlton, but he had pictures of these guys literally in like black backpacks, dark sunglasses, cameras, and all these pictures of these people who were what they were doing was trying to put the zap on him. They were basically following him, knowing that he knew that they were following him, right? They weren't surreptitious. They were meant to be seen, and it was a form of intimidation. So Knowlton has those pictures. I don't think they were ever published, but yeah. I mean, I sat at a table with John Clark, Patrick Knowlton, supped with them. I used to take the Metro with Clark, so I knew. So for me, that was kind of that was an eye opener to alternate things. So when people get suicided, which is just happening all the time, man, all these celebrities and stuff, I always am suspicious.
No.
I'm always suspicious, and because I can tell you for a fact that that guy was murdered. Vince Foster was murdered. He was dumped at Fort Marcy Park. When I walked Fort Marcy Park, Fort Marcy, the reason it got its name is that it was an old Civil War fort. And the way they made those forts back in those days, they would just cut down a huge tree and use it as a berm, build up mud around it, and that would become a fort. So the way they found Vince Foster was on a berm. But the way that the body was placed give away that he didn't do it, because the way his body, he was lying on his back on a berm. So what he would have done, had to have done, and this is in addition to a lot of other factual problems, what he would have had to have done is decided to commit suicide, walk into the park about 200 yards, in a very private spot, and then walk to the bottom of a berm and shoot himself and plan it where he was going to fall back on the back of the berm. It's much easier if I could draw it for you, but it just doesn't make sense. The way that somebody would probably do it is stand at the top of the berm and commit suicide, and their body would fall and roll down in a crumpled heap at the bottom of the berm. Do you understand what I'm saying? He was placed on his back on a berm. In addition, and when people commit suicide with guns, the gun, believe it or not, your body goes through like this thing of immediate electrical shock. And if you're holding a gun, people will fling it. They'll oftentimes find these guns across a room. The gun was found on his right hand, and he was left-handed. So it's on the wrong hand that he used. And the gun is sketchy. Ask Mike Rivera about it. There's so many problems, dude. And he was, oh, man. So I actually interviewed another guy about, it was called Hillary and Vince. I interviewed them before the election 2016, So anyway, it's just so crazy, man. And the people, what people don't understand is these political, and it works on both sides of the aisle, Republican, Democrat, these party systems are immensely powerful. They have very talented people that, hundreds and hundreds of lawyers, PR people, they have fixers, cleaners. They're all in these parties. They work on both parties. So people see this front man of the politician. They don't see the army that they are fronting. They don't see Hillary Clinton's army. They don't see Obama's army. They don't see, George W. Bush, how many people are supporting him. So, for me, D.C. was a real wake-up call. That's why I got the hell out of there in 3 years. After I was done with law school, I was super corrupt. Super corrupt.
Wow, man, we have to finish our last interview that we got cut off. Again, the same problem with the internet here locally. But we were previously we were talking also about the Super Soldier program and Andrew Basiago before getting cut off. Right. And it was kind of getting really funny, like interesting.
Well, I think I had said in that last interview that Basiago references the space program's launch pad to Mars is in El Segundo at a building like I walk by all the time. Like, it's not plausible. And I see people in there, pushing paper and looking miserable. So, I mean, it's just the opposite of like a secret thing that people drive by to get to the airport, LAX, all the time. So, yeah.
Are you talking about the jump room, the Mars jump room?
Yeah, where he goes.
Johnny knows.
Yeah, he jumps to Mars and fights dinosaurs, right?
I heard Obama jumped to Mars too. Like a bunch of them did.
Yeah. With Obama, maybe you can be. Well, I was speculating there's a coffee bean and tea leaf right nearby, so I was going to go get some provisions. I was going to get a double latte and a spork or some type of plastic implement and go over to the secret jump room and just test it out.
Yeah.
I figure a latte will last me on Mars a couple hours. I won't starve. And if I get attacked by a dinosaur, I've got a spork. I've got weaponry. I'm good.
I'm in touch with Andrew Basiago. I might actually interview him one of these days when get around to messaging him again. But that would be a fun. What should I ask him? Like, what if I'll ask him? I'll be like, I talked to a friend who says he went there and he didn't see anything, but he got a spork. What should I?
Well, ask him this. Ask him if he's ever been in the care of a shrink or mental institution. Has he ever heard of MK Ultra? And why has he given talks at Jay-Z Nights, Ramtha thing? Why is he associated with her? Why has he talked to her about that? I think that would be very interesting. That guy. Whoa.
Yeah.
There's
when I
something.
talk to people, you're the law, and I mean Andrew Basiago is also a lawyer. Apparently, that's what he says.
Right. So they say. I've never.
And there's another guy named Tolik in the New Age community that's part of all the the space Andromeda Council contactee community, and he's also practicing law, but he uses a code name. But you can tell by the way they talk that they're really they're well versed and they're well versed with words.
Oh yeah, I mean he's got his thing down, but it's just not plausible, dude. He's supposedly a lawyer with the state bar in Washington. So I'm looking it up right now.
I heard a presentation on the Mars jump room. I think it was on Coast to Coast. It was like maybe 15 years ago, and the guy was really convincing. It made me think maybe it was a real thing. There's this, the NSA or whatever the Black Projects had actually created this jump room where it was like a trans-dimensional portal to Mars, and yeah, there's like people that seriously believe that's real.
Yeah, but Andrew Basiago is a practicing lawyer. He's active. He was admitted to the state bar in Washington State, 1996. He's in Vancouver, and which is outside of Portland, I believe.
Yeah, it's right 6 miles from here, right across the river.
Yeah, so...
Johnny, I think you should hire Andrew Basiago for just make up something like your neighbor is driving you crazy and you need a lawyer about something, and just get him have like a little, you pay like $100, and I don't know how much they charge, but I had a lawyer with Yale that graduated from Yale back when all this garbage started, and I went into this office right next to the U.S. Embassy in Taipei. And the guy was the creepiest guy ever. He cost me $100 just to sit down and talk with him for like 10 minutes. That's how much he charged. And I just wanted to see what would happen. I was like, I need to get some advice here. And he was like, yeah, we'll get your daughter back. We're good. We're expensive, but we're good. Looks like you got a good case here. It was creepy, man.
That's creepy. That sounds like he was doing a pretty sleazy sale there. I put Basaggio's information on Skype so you can see it with his email. Okay. So you guys can email him and ask him.
We'll have to contact. He's the Mars. Wait a minute. Who is this guy? I haven't even heard of the guy. Is he the Mars jump room guy?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
I should know that.
Contact him. You live right next to him. Let's just contact him, not as like a host of the Iron Show. Contact him as like, you need a lawyer. Just see what he does.
Go knock on his door and ask him to take me to the jump room.
Yeah, there you go. Right here. If you come down to the jump room, just come by. I'm about 15 blocks away. So
really?
Yeah. I'll pay for the coffee bean and tea leaf lattes.
Cool.
We can get a couple donuts, and we'll be good for 6-7 hours at least.
Fair. I want to go to the jump room. Is there a jump room in Hawaii that I can jump over the jump room over there, and then we can all go to Mars?
Probably.
Anyway,
it's inside of Diamond Head, like some kind of James Bond superstructure. It's actually fake, and inside it's actually the jumper. Probably.
I wasn't listening close enough. William, did you say you went to the jump room to look at it?
Dude, I drive by there every day, bro.
No, I mean, did you go in there?
Well, it's a building. It's actually strange because I think it's 999 Sepulveda. Or 666. It's got some kind of weird number. But it's on the corner. You can Google it. And I've seen it on there. It's Sepulveda and Imperial Highway, and it's a partially glass, so you can see inside of it. So it's not It's not like some kind of secret space program where you can't see in. And you can go in there and just take the elevator up and dilly dally around. So it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but
of course, I know what they'll say. Like, oh no, yeah, that was in the '60s and '70s when I was a part of the Pegasus Project. When my father were taken back to the, blah blah blah. I know what they'll say. And the thing is, they believe their own stuff. I really think that Anderson Institute and Andrew Basiago and Captain Randy Kramer, they're so well versed in their own story, and they've just believed it so much that Douglas Dietrich, you mentioned that you heard the interview with him interviewing me, but I interviewed Douglas about the secret space program, and he got very heavily into the Aleister Crowley sort of super soldier, super victim brainwashing program and like this Kodak thing. It's very fascinating. And I know that Douglas, a lot of things that he says, people are like, no, this is the exact opposite of what really happened. But you can't deny the guy is a freaking genius. Like the way his way with words and stuff, his photographic memory.
But the references are legit. He's actually, when I listened to that thing for 2 hours, I couldn't find any factual inaccuracies. He's like restating things off the top of his head. Okay,
wow. I should tell him that. He's got a lot of enemies. I get a lot of comments on YouTube that are just like, Douglas Dietrich is a blah, 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 dear. I think I did like.
I wonder why. Well, I mean, I guess if you work under Aquino, you're going to get some pretty interesting people coming out.
Wasn't Aquino the guy that the men that stare at goats and all that? Wasn't he a part of that?
No, but I think that he was part of from what is it? PSYOP to Mind War. Have you read that book?
You're talking about like MK Ultra.
No, dude, it was like something different where he's like talking about the next step beyond psychological operations is just pure mind war, where you're just you don't run a psychological operation and quit. You just go to war against people's minds permanently. Have you ever read PSYOP to Mind War by Aquino?
No.
I should read that.
You gotta read it. Oh, dude.
I gotta read that.
And one of the kickers is about that book is that Colonel Paul Vallely, who he wrote it with, is on Fox News all the time. He's like always on there as a Fox News contributor. You can read it for free on Archive. I'm putting the link in Skype.
Do you think we're like? Do you think we're like the victims of a mind war? Do you think it's like happening to us now?
I think that actually under the Bush administration, I think he implemented some of the ideas of Aquino in running, the 8 years that he was in. But he references John Mark's The Search for the Manchurian Candidate in this book.
There was a lot of occult stuff in Bush's speeches, like the angel and the whirlwind, and
no doubt.
And
in war, this is Aquino. He references MacArthur saying, "In war, there's no substitute for victory." But yeah, no, Bush. Do you ever see the thing where Bush had talked to Ozzy Osbourne?
No.
Said, yeah, go look that up online. It's a crazy video.
What?
But he's talking to Osbourne. Osbourne gets up and gives like the Masonic hailing sign where he puts his hands over his head and waves to him, and then Bush Jr. starts talking about the Black Sabbath songs, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, Night, all these really graphic stuff, War Pigs, and then he says to Ozzy, "Mom loves your stuff," and the whole audience laughs. It's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Have you seen George Bush's artwork? He's become an artist now.
It's not pretty. Did you ever see the video of his mom talking to Larry King where she says, "If you touch my kid, I'll kill you"?
No.
I'll read it to you. Here it is. This is from live transcript, Larry King Live, October 22nd, 2003. Barbara Bush. Well, first of all, you have to watch the father of the present suffer. And it hurts when your children are criticized. It hurts a lot. Larry King. He takes it badly? Bush. Barbara Bush. He and I both do. He curses, I grip my teeth. But no, he knows it's the name of the game. But it gets pretty ugly. King. It was much harder for you. Barbara Bush. Much. Larry King. When the current president is criticized, when the husband was criticized. Right. King. How do you explain it? Motherly. Barbara Bush. Motherly. And fatherly. I mean, it's just a normal reaction. But the same would be true if something happened that was difficult for Jeb or for Doro or Neil or Marvin. And you can criticize me, but don't criticize my children, and don't criticize my daughters-in-law, and don't criticize my husband, or you're dead.
Whoa. She actually threatened Larry King?
Yeah, she just made this statement that don't touch my children or I'll kill you.
Wow.
2003, so she's gone.
Wow.
I still think it's an open question whether she is the genetic offspring of Crowley. I think it's still a valid question. I don't have the answer.
That was a huge conspiracy about that. Do you remember that, Michael?
I never heard that before. I may have heard it a long time ago in passing, but that's fascinating.
If you guys,
it's great to hear from you. Yeah.
It's not something that goes away. But if you read Children of the Beast, I have a picture of her and her husband in like imperial purple in front of George W. Bush's aircraft carrier with the number 77, which is Crowley's Liber Oz. You know, it's the rights of Crowley's rights of man, where you can do whatever you want, and if anybody frustrates those rights, you can kill them. So it's kind of like this weird tie-in between her, the numerology, the illuminated numerology of Bush, and the statement within Crowley's statement and her statement. It all fuses together. If you really kind of key into it in the book, it's like a real subtle, like, and it makes sense. It all fits sense. And her story, you know, they had a kind of an arranged marriage, her and her husband. But the timing of when Crowley was in France, when her mother was in France, her name was, I can't remember her maiden name now, the mother's name. But Crowley was there with this guy, and they were practicing these kind of rituals that required servitors. And her mother was friends with this O'Hara girl who was friends with Crowley's friend Harris. And she comes back pregnant. She doesn't live. Have you seen the picture of Barbara Bush with her family when she's younger? She's a genetic anomaly. She doesn't look like the rest of them.
Fascinating. Wow.
Was her mother anybody significant or not really?
No, her mother was so the father was the head, I think he was Harper's Magazine. He was the publisher of Harper's, but she's a Pierce. So I think it used to be one of the big, it was one of the big firms in New York City. One of the big financial firms it was something, but Pierce was one of her father's father was. So both sides of that family have huge financial firm backgrounds, you know, because George Bush Sr.'s dad, Prescott, worked for Harriman Brothers, right? So yeah,
the Nazis?
They're blue buds. Well, there's a lot of sympathy. Yeah, well, the dad was a Nazi sympathizer through Union Bank. I think they had the bank shut down because of their relationship and trading with the Nazis, if I remember correctly. And he was supposedly, the Prescott, the grandfather, was involved in like trying to overthrow Roosevelt, and then that book, that War is a Racket by Smedley Butler. Smedley Butler was one of the people who knew about it and publicized their shenanigans, their kind of deep state shenanigans during the war. So there's all kind, you know, this kind of deep conspiratorial politics, subterfuge, and all that. It didn't start 10 years ago. It goes way back.
It goes all
probably pre, you know, Federal Reserve, goes all the way back. I mean, if you look at Jackson and his desire to stop a nationalized bank, I mean, he got shot twice. A guy walked up to him, pulled the trigger, and the gun misfired. I mean, the dude, people are trying to kill Jackson all the time. So, I mean, it goes way back. Andrew Jackson.
Well, there is the thing about, you know, George Washington writing letters about the dangers of the Illuminati and infiltrating the Freemason lodges. So
right. And involved in the French Revolution, right? So
I think Kennedy pretty much echoed his sentiments in his speech. That's what got him killed, partly.
Partly, I bet, absolutely. Among other things, I think he was kind of a resistor. He had some really sketchy personal relationships and all kinds of stuff. And people around Kennedy died. There was one girl, her name was Mary Pinchot, Pincho. She was killed in D.C. on the locks in Georgetown. He was a lover of Kennedy. He was kind of an intermediary and supposedly rumored to have delivered LSD from Timothy Leary as an intermediary to Kennedy while he was president.
I know he was on a lot of amphetamines and other vitamins, and he had a private doctor that followed him around, injecting him constantly.
Yeah, with steroids and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, he wasn't in good health. Yeah,
no.
There's some color pictures of him where he looks like his skin is, you know, like he had diabetes or something. Like the tan was trying to cover something up. Like he just wasn't healthy. He was constantly in a back brace, is my understanding. You know? So yeah, that Kennedy death, It's interesting too because you can always remember the death of Aldous Huxley, C.S. Lewis, and John F. Kennedy because they all died on the same day, September 22nd, 1963.
Really?
Yep.
I remember that's my first memory. Although they say that would be impossible for me to remember it. I was a year and 12 days old, but I remember my mom looking at the TV and crying, bawling her eyes out.
Oh, that's amazing.
And when I was maybe 7 or 8, I asked her about that memory. She goes, "That was when they shot President Kennedy. How could you remember that?" Well, it's my oldest memory.
That's remarkable.
Kind of dates me, huh? Scary.
Well, my mom was kind of like, she's always voted Republican, but she had pictures of John F. Kennedy on her wall. She really liked him.
The country loved Kennedy. Just pretty much everybody loved him. He was he was like our last good president, even though he was kind of a bad guy. But
yeah, no, well, I mean, get out of Vietnam. What happened when he died? Johnson comes into power, and we go to Vietnam, right? Escalate all those wars. Johnson didn't he have some guy Mac or something? Who was a member of the Skull and Bones? He was his hitman. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. And who got their start in politics under Johnson?
Who?
Bill Clinton.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was one of Johnson's, I think, frontmen back in the day. They're both Southerners, right?
Right, he was.
Johnson is really a scoundrel. I mean, a real rogue.
Yeah, there's a lot of really weird things. Like when they swore Johnson in, I was hearing something about that. They didn't do it that way back then, but you could tell it was rehearsed. Like they had planned the whole thing. You could probably articulate that. Do you know anything about that? You know what I'm talking about?
What, the swearing in? Yeah, wasn't some guy like winking at wasn't he winking at LBJ or something like that? But yeah, I think that there was some anomaly, if I remember that.
There's something where he was sworn in basically before he was supposed to be sworn in, or it was done differently in a way that presidents aren't sworn in. It was, I wish I could articulate it. That's what I get for opening my mouth. Michael, this is your show.
Well, my mind is jumping into a million tangents listening to you guys because, like, Douglas Dietrich talking about, the surrender of Japan being a weird thing and the ceremonies. Oh, and to tie it back into the family international cult again, it's interesting that when Obama was sworn in as president, that the guy that was doing it was actually related to someone in the cult. And he actually made a mistake, and he said, "I do solemnly swear to betray the United States of America." And then Obama corrects him. He's like, "You mean," and he says some other word, he's like, sorry. It's just the most prophetic thing ever. But there's all kinds of interesting things that happen in those moments of declaration that are like key things, like, and with the Japan thing, Douglas says that Japan swore that Japan admitted defeat with an upside down flag, which would have been illegal. So then his big thing is like, well, Japan never formally surrendered. That means they won the war. Well, I wouldn't take it that far, but it's still interesting to know like what goes on underneath all the legalese that, we're given in the mainstream media to think what happened,
Right.
It might not be jump rooms to Mars though.
Right. I think that's a little too far out.
I did want to say the reason I wanted to bring that back up though, because we left off from there, was that one of the other interesting things Douglas pointed out is that a lot of these super soldiers that have been to Mars, they all worked under the same kind of psychological brainwashing unit or something that, in essence, they've all been basically MK Ultra'd. And the super soldiers, one other name that maybe you guys haven't heard because you haven't been like bored and listening to YouTube for the last decade as I have. Before getting into this podcasting stuff, I've been listening to every gosh darn Carrie Cassidy interview with, Project Camelot
or what? Yeah.
James Casbolt. I listened to every James Casbolt interview, and they all say the same thing: is that they have there's a George Bush Sr. and the Queen of England are in these underground Nazi Fifth Reich off-world time traveling super soldier units while you're getting like brainwashed to become superhuman or whatever. And it's interesting that they always mention George Bush. Well, I just saw Donnie Darko for the first time in 15 years. My wife was like, "We got to watch Donnie Darko." I'm like, "Are you serious? You hate scary movies?" I'm like, okay, let's watch it. And there's a scene where it's like an MK Ultra flashing with information scrolling through the screen, and then it just flashes George Bush's senior's face, like just for a split second. It's totally, it's totally there. And it just makes you wonder, like that movie was like a total expose of, pedophilia in high places. Like it's blatant. Everybody should watch Donnie Darko again.
Wow, I gotta check that out. There's a movie. Yeah, I'm gonna be done soon. I got a movie for you guys to watch. Have you guys ever watched The Parallax View?
Yes, but it's been a while.
God, you guys gotta watch that again. It's incredible. Okay. Mind
Got
control, patsy creation, political assassination. It's all there.
The Parallax View.
Mike, I hate to do this to you, but I think I gotta wrap it up.
Thank you so much for your patience. I know you were waiting since like 3.5 hours ago to start. So.
Well, I wasn't twiddling my thumb sitting in front of the computer, but I thought we were going to go 8 my time. So anyway, it's all good. Thanks for having me on your show.
I'll use a phone.
Great to talk to you. I learned a lot.
Great talking to you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you, Johnny. Johnny, you recorded this whole thing on Spreaker, right?
I did. I got it. Yeah, I got it on my machine. I got it on Spreaker. It's all available for download later.
Awesome. Thank you, Johnny. Great to be with you as well.
Good to hang out with you guys. Awesome.
Do you? Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Alrighty. Blessings. Okay, bye.